Okay, I'm waiting to see about Joe to finish up or try to make some 114 and 104 decals. He doesn't have those, but he has one a 13 and 103, so shouldn't be too hard. I'm going to do some bars on here and maybe try to refinish some bars. I've got 6 bars here. Two of them aren't going to need decals because don't often see decals on roller nose. This is a 24-inch Oregon roller nose, 3/8 by 0.050, and that's a really nice bar. I'll just probably buff it up a little bit more, and then this one's I guess it would be a 20-inch roller nose bar as well. And like I said, you don't normally see decals on these bars, and this one's not marked, but both of these bars will fit the home lights, but they just have one round hole. They don't have the oblong hole, so these are pretty old bars. These would probably fit several other brands, 9.5 bar slot. Maybe that is. Actually, that's a little less. It looks like about 8.5 on them. So these were 5/16 studs on both the roller nodes. So these were probably pre-67 bars when they were still using 5/16 studs, and probably were home light bars. This one, Oregon, I'm almost sure that because of the number on it, that was a Oregon made for home light bar. This one appears to be 2. They've got a lot of life left in them. They're not beat up, they're not broken. I noticed that the Oregon bar has a 24-inch, seems to have a slightly smaller roller nose, and then this is the fatter one. So I would probably think that this one here might be a little older. They would tend to be fatter bars, the older bars, but maybe not. Maybe not, just maybe it's because of the length, I don't know. So I'm not sure whether those will actually get a decal on them or not, ever, but this is a SP 16 381 D5 bar. It's a laminated bar from the late, probably the early 80s. It probably just said big block letters, red home light across the top, and or if it said home light sprocket tip and had a little decal in here around here, so it was a power tip. Might have been a power tip bar, but I sanded it down, but I thought before I sanded it down it said D5, so that might depend on what kind of decal, if any, I put on that, because not really that great a bar, laminated bar. It's okay. It might be worth putting a decal on it. And you know it's a D5 because it has this little square hole here and a place for a what do you call it? Safety tip. This was available. This one came with this, was available because that little square hole there, and the safety tip hooked in, and then the bolt went right through here. So anyway, which was a good invention. Now I've got 2 home light bars that are marked with home light serial numbers, and before 66 and 60, maybe 65, these home light marked the bars with serial numbers, not model numbers or anything else, which is weird because the serial numbers don't seem to make much sense. But you know, that way, you know, if you had your serial number of your saw and the serial number of your bar, you could keep them together, make sure something didn't happen to it, or you could find it if it was lost or stolen. This is a 16-inch bar, and it's still got a lot of life in it. It's a perma hard tip bar. I don't know how much stellite's left on the outside, if any. Doesn't look bad though, but it'll get a perma hard tip decal on that. And this is the same bar, different serial number. And another one will get the same decal, perma hard tip bar. You can see a little of the stellite left on this one right here. And I'm not real concerned about that because I'm not going to be using these. But on the Stellite perma hard tips, they would take about maybe less than a quarter, maybe 3/16 of an inch, and they would put a hardened Stellite finish on the ends of these bars to make them last longer. And this was before they started using sprocket tips, which were replaceable, and so it used a lot less wear on a tip to have a sprocket tip or a roller nose. The roller nose were expensive to make. Sprocket tips not so much, and you can pound out the rivets on the sprocket tips and put a new sprocket in there. But the sprocket keeps the wear off the end of the bar, whether it's a roller nose or a sprocket tip. The last one's a perma hard tip bar in a 20-inch, and it's got these all have a lot of life in it. This 16-inch probably has the least amount of life in it, and you could tell how close that oiler. See how that's worn a lot further than here. Would run that upside down to where this chain was. It was on this part was on the bottom because of that oiler hole being that close. But like I said, I'm not going to be running these, so it's not that big a deal. But the 20-inch has lots of room over the oiler hole, so it wasn't worn, and there's still a good amount of the Stellite left on it. And it's not marked, but I'll probably put a perma hard tip bar on it, decal on it too. So, but like I said, I'm hoping Joe will. And another thing about this 20-inch bar, if you look at this 20-inch bar, that flat right here, that came off of a very old bar. Not only because of the width, but later on that back piece became curved to fit up against the sprocket, or back further to the sprocket. But the older bars, so this might have been on actually a pre-75 bar, like a Zip or a Super 66, 700, 720, one of these, what I call primitive saws. And you can tell, like I said, by the square back. And it's fatter too. The newer bars were a little narrower and had a rounded back on it, where you push it back against the sprocket, give you a little bit more room to put the chain on. And that's just the development of the bar. This is a much older bar, and it runs the bigger roller nose and fatter width. So, but getting back to Joe, like I said, I'm hoping he'll get the 114 and 104 decals done. I'd like to do those two saws, I guess, next, and then the 103 that I have. So I would, have the 102, 103, 104, 113, 114 all restored. And it shouldn't be too bad for him to make 104 and 114, since he already has the 103, 113, which all it is a number change. And I say all it is a number change. I don't know what it takes, and I'm sure it's probably not real easy. Joe with Sugar Creek makes decals for tons of people. I mean, tons of different saws, and he works a full-time job. So, his time is limited. So I understand that. So, what I'm trying to do is get some decals that he already has, or stencils, and work on this until he can get some of these other ones made. But what I'm running into, and what I'll run into after this, is that the majority of my saws that I want to collect are fairly rare saws, and he has fewer and fewer of those type of decals in his inventory. So I could have, we have a old saw shop guy named Brian Greenrich, and he's really good. He makes great decals. He made some decals for me for the XL70 and XL75 as a set, so I could have either one. But I had to buy 5 or 10 sets, and I think Leon and I split an order of 10, and it was $180 or $190. But that worked out to like $19 a set, and we split I gave him 6. I took 4. I don't know. I don't remember how we split it, but there was enough to do 870s and 875s in each set. So it even worked out better than that somewhat. But doing the design work is what it costs. So when you order one, it's a set of 5, it's $140. A set of 10 is like $175, and then we talk about shipping or printing. So in the end, 5 for $150 and 10 for $180. But the problem with that is that like the ones with 870 and 875 are really rare saws, and you don't see them. So where are you going to get rid of the extra decals? I mean, if you can collect enough guys that want decals ahead of time, then you're golden. If you can get 5 or 10 guys that want these decals for a certain saw, you're golden. But trying to find decals for some of these, like the XL 700 AM or 701 AM, that's a Canadian-made saw. He doesn't have very many Canadian-made decals because when he bought the designs from Homelight, that's from my understanding, they probably find nothing that surely didn't include any Canadian decals. But I think he has a few that are saws that were made in both America and Canada. But I'm quickly getting to the point where almost all my decals are going to have to be custom made, pretty close. I still have a few like the 923, 903, and 924, about 900 series. But they're not real rare saws, so I'm holding them back a little bit until I can get some of the more unusual saws done. Like the 104 and 114 were electronic ignition, and they used the early transformer electronic ignition, solid state ignition in them from the early 70s. The 104 came first, and then the 114 was a later version with an updated type of flywheel and electronic ignition. And so those are pretty rare. In fact, there were 2 models of the 104, early and late model, and they used different part numbers. They were similar, but the transformers and flywheels and switches were different part numbers, so they were different. And then after that came the 114. And I have 2 104s, early and late model, and finding the parts for those was just incredibly hard. Same thing with the 904 I restored, the solid state ignition. I have 2 of those, but those same ones go into 870 or 875, I guess. And those are really hard to come by, those early electronic ignitions. I believe they also came in the 850. But finding those is really difficult because when those things went bad, those early electronic ignitions, rather than buy a new module or a new transformer, most of the saw shops or the individuals just put a new flywheel and points ignition under them, and which, at the time, I don't think those transformers were that high. I mean, I think it was more the fact that people were afraid of them a little bit more and wanted to go back to the basics. So they spent a lot more money transforming. So even if you buy a 104 or 114 or an 850 or an 875 or a 904, there's no guarantee you're going to get the original and have an original electronic ignition system under it. And even if you do, you don't know whether it works. And finding another one is probably not going to, unless you buy a whole saw that's running. It's like the twin cylinder Echo transformers. They're just non-existent. And even if you find one for those, it's probably just a matter of time before it goes out, because they had problems with them, I guess. From what I understand, they didn't last long. So those kind of scare me. But anyway, it's been hot here. I'm sure it's been hot everywhere. We've had a record heat. I'm getting ready to go get my measurement down my well. I haven't hooked up my well pump yet, but I want to, when I measured it this spring, and the well was 99 feet deep and water was 90 feet deep. So I had plenty of water, and after this dry spell, I want to see how much water is still left in it, because next spring I'm going to have my pump hooked up and I'm gonna water the fire out of my yard and garden. I'm gonna make it where it stays green and healthy, and put a bunch of nitrogen down. Try to work on that just because I like to mow. All right. Anyway, everybody take care. Bye.